It's very interesting that this piece, Carcassi's Opus 60, number 16, has made it onto the new grade 5 repertoire for List B, because it's a very, very unusual piece. It's a very singular composition, and it's full of very interesting features, and of course your job as player is to deal with those features to bring them out as much as you can. Clearly, if you look at it, it's got a tune in the upper voice, completely normal, but then it's got an accompaniment which, at least as the first line is concerned, is just a middle voice. There's no bass. And while later on in the piece some of the lower notes of that middle voice become like a bass line, nonetheless there is a feeling throughout the piece as that it's a piece that has no bass line. And one of the things that it reminds me very much of is there is a thing of writing pieces for the piano that only use the left hand, and so the texture is very much sort of thinner and more concentrated than when obviously you're normally writing for two hands on the piano. And there's something very sort of disciplined and focused about this piece that comes from that kind of way of writing it. It's also interesting because it's written in the key of F, and it's almost as though Carcassi chose that key because it's the key where there are very few open strings which are going to resonate, because clearly the most important thing about the piece in one sense is that you have all these rests, the quaver rests in the accompaniment and the crotchet rests in the tune, and dealing with those rests is very important, and maintaining that clarity of texture is perhaps in a sense easier in a key like F, because as I say there are fewer resonances coming up out of the bass strings. Now let's have a look at the piece in a bit of detail. You'll notice straight away, I hope, that it's in 2-bar phrases, and every phrase in one sense is identical. What I mean is that each phrase is made up of a tune where you have a minim, 2 crotchets, minim with a hairpin coming down to the crotchet and then the crotchet rest, and then the accompaniment is doing its thing in between the tune notes, and that formula carries on through the entire piece. And being in 2-bar phrases, one of the things that you'll appreciate is you've got to give an impression of continuity and the piece hanging together, but at the same time you have to give the impression of the piece speaking to you, or if you like, singing to you or to your listener. And one of the most important things about that is how you deal with the breathing places. Each crotchet rest in the tune is an opportunity for a breathing place. But just like when you're talking or writing and you punctuate what you have to say, not all of these crotchet rests are equal. For example, the crotchet rest just before the repeat bar is more important. It's more of a kind of full stop punctuation than the one at the end of the second bar, for example. It's also very important that you connect with the way that the 2-bar phrase in each case, I think in each case, has a hairpin from the minim on the first beat to the crotchet on the third beat. And what happens in those places is that minim is a note which is sticking out. It's harmonically not at rest with the chord that is underneath it, and that quality of being not at rest resolves itself on the third beat on the crotchet. So to illustrate that with the beginning, we have this first inversion F chord, and the F is of course very much at home there. Then the chord changes underneath, so you have the B flat and the C, and what it's going to, it's actually going to a C 7th chord with the B flat, the 7th in the bass, but the F stays with us just for a moment, and so that F, which to begin with is a dissonance then falls to the E. Now there are two really important things to deal with here. Firstly is that as the hairpin indicates, the F is strong and the E is weaker in this second bar instance. Also that because the F is the dissonance, the note that doesn't sit easily with the harmony, it has to connect absolutely as legato as you can with the note of resolution, with the E in this case. So it's really, really vital, for example in the second bar, that you don't allow the F to go before it's time to play the E. The F has to be heard almost as though you're playing a slur, that it falls onto the E. If this tune was being played, for example, on a violin, that would be very much done with a slur, so that you hardly noticed the change from the F to the E, in the sense that it just sounded like the F turning into the E. It falls onto it. Obviously we're not doing a slur in any technical sense in those places when we're playing this piece, but it's a musical quality that you're looking for, which comes out of the way the piece is constructed, and also how it relates to pieces written for other instruments. Remember I said it's a little bit like it's a piece for piano left hand. Well, not just piano left hand, but everything written for piano, or as I say, for string instruments and so on. They have these same processes built into them, and it's very important that we as guitar players do the same things when the piece is asking us for those qualities in our playing.